So the last round of the Rugby Championship is taking place this weekend, and the Wallabies hosting the All Blacks in what could be a very crucial match for both of these sides. And maybe it isn't just to do with the Rugby Championship. World ranking points are on the line, and as we get closer to that World Cup draw, which has been announced as December 3rd, every single point could be absolutely crucial towards where these two sides finish for that World Cup draw. But jumping into this preview, we will be looking through at the lineups, the key head-to-heads to watch out for, also a couple statistics along the way, and then a prediction at the end who I think will win this match. But we will start with the side that did announce their team first, that being New Zealand, announced today at 5:30 p.m, whereas Australia, they announced their side just 1 hour later at 6:30. But looking through at the starting lineup for the Kiwis, they have made multiple changes compared to what we saw in the last contest, including this front row: number 1, Tamaiti Williams; number 2, Cody Taylor; and number 3, Fletcher Null. So 3 Crusaders up front. Ethan Negru out because of a head knock. Tyrell Lomax, it's actually been now said that he has broken the same thumb that he broke not too long ago, but he's broken it in a different way. So that is extremely unfortunate for that man, seeing as he just came back from a relatively long layoff. In the locking duo, this is where we do see the return of Scott Barrett after his shoulder injury, and Tupavai slots in as the number 5. In the loose forward, Simon Parker starts at 6. That has become a pretty consistent part of this All Blacks team. Number 7, Artie Savia, back to vice-captain, and number 8, Peter Larkai, for his first start of his international career. In the 19 combination, it will be Cam Roigard partnered with Damian McKenzie. Now, some wanted to see the opportunity for Ruben Love here, but that is not the case. He is instead making his way off of the bench. Lester Whainanuku out on that left wing, so he is now getting his first minutes for the All Blacks, I believe, since that Rugby World Cup in 2023. Geordie Barrett as the number 12, with Quinn Tupaia slotting in at 13, so no Billy Proctor for this game. Tupaia, he's played just over 20% of his career as an outside centre, came off the bench last week, brought the impact, so the All Blacks have added him in to the starting lineup here. Number 14, Leroy Carter, and then number 15 for his 50th cap, it is Will Jordan. Now, he has already scored a huge amount of tries throughout those 49 matches, so I'm sure by the time he gets to the 100, he will have many more already under the belt. Few notable names off of the bench. In terms of the little switches that we have seen, George Bower comes in due to the injuries of De Groot and Norris as the loose head prop, so no debut here for Tavita Mafaleo, who has been training with the squad, still going with that experience off the bench of Patrick Tuipulotu. Satiti, very versatile player to have at number 20, seeing as he can play anywhere in that loose forward trio. And then also Ioane and Ruben Love, the back replacements alongside Ratama that New Zealand have gone with. But jumping into the Wallabies lineup, they have also made a couple changes compared to what we saw in the last contest. Number 1, James Slipper for his 151st game for the Wallabies. That man's bringing up the 150 last week, continuing to play, and still a very dangerous loose head for this Wallabies team. Number 2, Billy Pollard, and number 3, Alan Alatoa. So we do see Tani Alatupo go from the starting lineup to the bench for this matchup. Nick Frost as the number 4, with Will Skelton returning in the 5 jersey. That man just brings a certain physicality, which is pretty easy to do when you are the size of Will Skelton, but he is going to be a very handy player out there on the field. For Australia, in the loose forward trio, we see no changes. Tom Hooper as the number 6. I call him the underrated member of this loose forward trio. That man does an insane amount of work. Normally the flashy stuff you see from Fraser McRoy, who is playing in 7 for this game, and Harry Wilson, who is the number 8. But Hooper is very much a key part of this Australian fullback. But Wilson and McRoy, they will look for a couple more steals than they got in that last contest. And Harry Wilson, his ball running is always one keep an eye out for. Their number 9, they have gone with Jake Gordon, and number 10, Tane Edmed. Now, out of all of the feedback that I've seen from this Australian lineup, those are the 2 positions that people are most uncertain about. Jake Gordon comes in due to the injury of Tate McDermott off of the bench. They will once again have Ryan Lonergan, got his debut last week, but some felt Lonergan did enough to actually earn himself a starting jersey in this matchup. James O'Connor, he has moved from the starting side onto the bench to make way for Tane Edmed to now get that chance as well. But it is going to be such an important duo throughout this matchup because New Zealand have gone Cam Roigard and Damian McKenzie, both quite attacking-minded players. So Australia can't afford to let New Zealand play their game in that channel. Instead have to try and take it to them with a very dangerous duo. And the rest of the backline, Filipa Daugunu moves into the starting lineup at 11 rather than Corey Toole, who was nowhere to be seen across this 23-man side. Len Ikitau and Joseph Suali'i will make up the midfield. We didn't see a huge amount of Suali'i in the last game, and I do think if New Zealand want to win this match at Optus Stadium, that is exactly how it has to be for this match as well. Harry Potter was out on the right wing last week, and he keeps that spot for this game. And then at number 15, it is once again Max Jorgensen. Few notable players off of the bench. The return of Rob Ballatini in that number 20 jersey. That will be a pretty brutal impact coming off the bench. Definitely with how Australia have been finishing their matches throughout this Rugby Championship. Lonergan is still there, like I mentioned, as well as JOC. But there is also a JF, Josh Fluke, in the number 23 jersey. He's a young, talented player for Australia, and I'm curious to see whereabouts they will slot him into this backline, because he does offer a few different positions, and he's got a lot of pace. So later on in the game, like I mentioned, when Australia start to really try and get those gears grinding, that is when someone like a Fluke alongside James O'Connor can make all of the difference. But those are the lineups, ladies and gentlemen, for this matchup. We now move on to the key head-to-heads. Now, for the Australians, you don't have to look much further than that number 5. First battle, Will Skelton versus Tupovai. Now, Will Skelton being back, like I mentioned, it brings that physicality. It brings a lot to the breakdown as well, even if that's just being a nuisance. And I mean that in the most respectful and positive way possible. Skelton gets under people's skin. And someone like a Tupovai, he has been known to get excited and maybe a little bit at times over the top when it comes to certain decisions in the breakdowns. And that is where these two personalities could clash in a pretty ugly way throughout this matchup. But Skelton, he will try and get the Kiwis riled up. Tupovai, this is going to sound kind of bad to say, but I feel like he's due a yellow card. And I don't know whether or not that is just because New Zealand have gone 3 games in a row without a single yellow, when their first 2 games of the Rugby Championship, they gave away 5. But Tupovai, he's given away a lot of silly penalties over the last few weeks. 2 last week as well. It could have actually been 3 if it hadn't been for 1 getting reversed against Australia. So he has to really sort out his discipline here, because if not, I feel like a card could be coming his way. And if there's one thing I know about Optus Stadium, the All Blacks have received a few cards at this location, which I think does perfectly transition us to the next head-to-head, Jordie Barrett versus Len Ikitau in that number 12 battle. Barrett has been strong for New Zealand. He's made some great decisions when it comes to that back line. He's got a new friend in that midfield combo in Quinn Tupaea, and also a new option in the 10 jersey. A lot of this year we have seen Beauden Barrett taking on that first 5 role, whereas for this game it is Damian McKenzie. But Barrett, he's safe under the high ball. He shouldn't need to use that skill too much as a 12, but we actually saw him take a lot of the high ball from last week's game, so he can cover back if he needs to. Solid in defense, and overall just a good attacking threat for the All Blacks to have for this matchup. He is the guy who got the red card the last time these sides played at Optus Stadium. If I remember rightly, it was a boot to the head of a player when he was jumping up for a high ball. I think he extended his leg, caught the player in the face, and he was sent off for the rest of that game. 2 years prior, his brother Scott also got himself red carded at this game, but there are only 2 Barretts in the starting lineup. The one who hasn't received a card at this location cannot, as Beauden Barrett not playing for this game. But in the number 12 jersey for the Wallabies, it is Len Ikitau. He has been a really awesome part of this Australian backline. He will run the ball hard and get you those few post-contact meters. He's got a skill set that just seems to set up Suali'i beautifully. And again, with a new 9 and 10 combination, this is where you really need someone like a Len Ikitau to step up. And it's crazy to say, but as one of the more experienced backs across this Australian side and really control the way that this game goes, it's going to be a tough day at the office up against Jordie Barrett. But I feel like Len Ikitau, from what we've seen already this year, as well as his past seasons for the Wallabies, he will be up for the task, and hopefully he does do very well. And the last head-to-head in this matchup, I'm going to go with Max Jorgensen and Will Jordan. the 15s for this contest. Optus Stadium, the last 2 games that we've seen at this location, they've been pretty high scoring. They love to run the ball at this ground, and 2 men who are very dangerous with ball in hand are these two. Definitely when they're joining back up with that back line, coming in as second, third receivers. But Jorgensen's got just a ton of talent in that 15 jersey. In fact, he was talented out on the wing too. He's one of the young breakthrough players for the Australians. Will Jordan, I'll be honest, it doesn't feel like he has 50 caps. He still seems, in a way, like the new kid on the block for this AB side, and that is only because we've hardly seen him at fullback throughout those 50 caps. A lot of the time, in the earlier stages of his career, he was put out on the right wing, and maybe with that injury of Caleb Clark, some thought we were going to see it again taking place for this game, but instead gets that fullback role, and those two both have potential, getting 100 running meters throughout this matchup. But those are the head-to-heads. Jumping into the prediction now. I've been looking through it, a few bits of information about these two sides playing not just each other, but also playing each other in Australia, and there's some pretty intriguing ones heading into this contest. New Zealand are currently on a 10-match winning streak up against the Aussies. The last time they lost was back in November 2020. That was on Australian soil, but more so than that, New Zealand are on a 4-match winning streak at the moment up against Australia in Australia. Now, that may not sound like a substantial number with 4 wins in a row, but the last time that New Zealand won 4 or more in a row up against Australia in Australia was actually a 15-game winning streak between 1938 and 1974. So, as much stick as this current All Black side has received under Scott Robertson, they actually sit with a chance of making some pretty substantial history here up against an Australian side that, coming into this game, are not considered as big of an underdog as they were at Eden Park. And like I said, there's a lot on the line when it comes to the world rankings. If Australia were to beat New Zealand here, they would move back up to number 6 in the world, going ahead of Argentina. And with that Rugby World Cup draw so close to taking place, every extra bit of a point that you can get heading into that draw is absolutely crucial, especially for the Wallabies and the Pumas. Now, if New Zealand were to win this game on Australian soil, that would also give them a slight boost in the world rankings. They would go back to the number 2 ranked side in the world, and Ireland would drop back down to 3. Tell you what, that side has moved so much throughout this Rugby Championship, and they have not been playing any matches. They have just continuously gone up and down as New Zealand and South Africa have been jockeying for those top spots. But of course, November, we will get to see the Irish back in action, and in fact, they will be playing New Zealand as well as South Africa, so a lot to look forward to coming up in November. But back to the prediction. I'm thinking it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game here, mainly because that is what we are used to seeing at Optus Stadium. The sides at this stadium are actually, I believe, 1 win, 1 loss each. So pretty much what we have seen throughout the rest of this Rugby Championship is normally what you'd expect to see at Optus Stadium. Here, I'm going to go with New Zealand to win 43-28. And I have a couple reasons behind it, and they will probably end up being wrong. As you guys know, I'm terrible at predictions. Just, that's a perfect example of that. But for me, New Zealand, the changes that they have made here, I think, are going to really benefit them throughout this contest. Tupai has been in tremendous form, but the question is, with him playing at 13, is that going to be stronger than what we've seen from Billy Proctor throughout this Rugby Championship? I know a lot of people would say yes, but it's whether or not those two, Barrett and Tupai, can gel together for the full 80 minutes of this matchup. Leicester Whainānuku, there's a lot of questions around that man and where he is at international level wise, whether or not he'll be able to handle someone like a Harry Potter for his first game out. He has got the power and the speed, though Whainānuku, even if people like to try and say he's not as quick as he needs to be an international winger, I think he's still got a ton of pace and he'll still be a massive handful out on that wing. But I do think that 9-10 combo for Australia, I don't want to jinx it, but I think it's going to cost them a little bit here. To me, that combination just doesn't quite have that same X factor at the moment as what Cam Roigard and Damian McKenzie have. Plus, with the fact that we have hardly seen it pairing together, that may take a little bit longer to adjust. And that's normally when New Zealand have been at their best throughout this Rugby Championship. In the early stages, they were able to score themselves multiple tries up against Australia throughout that first half, particularly in that first quarter. So I would say the damage could almost be done by that stage. And then I'm still expecting that Australian comeback here, but maybe just not quite enough to get over the line. But of course, do let me know who you think will be winning this match. It is taking place at 10:45 p.m. New Zealand time on Saturday night. It will be 5:45 p.m. local time and then also 11:45 a.m. for you guys in South Africa. Straight after that game, we get to see the Boks take on the Pumas, so that will tell us who will win the Rugby Championship as soon as that match is over. But I do thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We're going to be doing the commentary for the game too, so be sure to check it out on the channel. And I will see you all for the next one.